Welcome back to the ASVAB Domination podcast. I am your host, Mickey Gaminal, and I am here with the awesome Cindy Palmer. She runs VOB podcast and she is a veteran herself. She has a really interesting ASVAB story that I'm super excited to get into, but she's also running VOB, which is another interesting facet. So, Cindy, thanks so much for joining us today.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, it's awesome to have somebody who's a fellow veteran running a business, trying to help other military members. So I think it's a great mission, and I think we're mutually aligned. So with further ado, let me get into it. Tell me about your ASVAB story from your perspective. I really liked the thing that you told me over the phone, so I just want to hear it for everybody else.
Yeah. So, I guess backing up just a little bit, I did pretty well in high school. So straight A student, honor society, all that stuff. I thought I didn't know what I wanted to do. I knew I couldn't afford to pay for college. Definitely not interested in being, tens of thousands of dollars in debt. So I didn't go to college. I worked, I don't know, like 5 jobs. I worked for the Texas Renaissance Festival, worked for a resort, also worked for a restaurant, worked for Pizza Hut for a little bit. Um, so I had all these little part-time jobs that I was doing. My dad said, he came November. He's like, look, man, I don't want to see you live your life like this. You're going to run yourself into the ground. And I'm like over here, like, I'm fine. I have lots of energy. I like this. Like, this is a lot of fun. So he told me, you need to go to college, a trade school, or the military. So I thought I was going to call his bluff, being that he served in the army and I was his little girl. I was like, oh, I'm going to join the military, and he's going to change his mind, and then he's not going to make me do this. So, lo and behold, he drove my ass to the recruiter. So yeah, so I actually was going to join the Air Force. Recruiter never showed up, so I was like, screw this. Went next door and went to the Navy. So and with the Navy, I took the ASVAB, scored a 80. I can't remember what it was. I think it was an 84. So did decent. And I actually give my dad a lot of credit for that one section that was all about, like, what is this tool and what do you call this? Because I would have known none of that if it weren't for him being a mechanic at the time, so changed my own oil, my spark plugs, all that good stuff. So after the ASVAB score came back, the recruiters were like, "Hey, like you're kind of smart." So they started putting, they told me about the Nuke program, and women were not in the program at the time that I joined, but they knew that they were going to open it up for females. So they went ahead and got me pre-tested and did all the fun stuff to get that ball rolling. Put me in a delayed entry program. So I think I signed up in November, went to boot camp in February in Orlando. Week 5 comes around. They pull you and sit you down, go over the final contract details. And the guy sitting across from me says, "Oh, so it looks like you're going to be one of the first female nukes." And I said, "Yeah, I'm very excited." And he's like, "Oh yeah, yeah, great news. The admiral just signed the paperwork, so women are allowed now." And I was like, "Okay." And then he's like flipping through my papers. Like, I'm pretty sure this dude already knew what he was going to say to me before he did. He was just like trying to be coy. And he said, "Oh, you weren't born in the United States." And I said, "No, you knew that." So, my mom is Korean. I was born in Korea, left when I was 1, and had no communication at that time with anybody on that side of the family. My family wasn't very well off, so, she never went home to visit. Maybe she did once, but yeah,
But
so
it
there's
it certainly wasn't grounds for, like, questionable, entry into the nuke program or anything like that.
right. Well, so now, like, if someone were to, like, if I were younger and try to go through the program now, it would be fine. I could get the clearances that were needed because it's allowed now. But like back then, it was not. So I said, okay, well, like, what do we do here? I'm just sitting here like, do I go home? Like, what is going on? So the guy said, well, your ASVAB score is high enough that you could have any job in the Navy that you wanted. And I said, well, except for being a nuke, right?
Hmm.
And he's like, well, yeah. And he said, but that's not because of your score. And I said, okay, well, let me be honest with you. The only thing I know about the Navy is Top Gun and the nuke program. So obviously you're not going to let me fly a pilot or, be a pilot if you're not going to let me be in the nuke program. So so I don't know what I can do. And they said, well, what do you like to do? And I said, photography. And they said, oh, you can't do that either. And I'm like,
Oh.
what? And they're like, yeah, because it depends on what you're taking pictures of. I'm like, I don't need to take pictures of that stuff. Like, just let me be a photographer. And so they're like, no, I can't do that. What classes were you good in high school? And I said, I don't know, all of them. I had straight A's. And they said, well, you could be a pay clerk. And I was like, oh, no, I don't
Wow.
know. I don't want to do that. And so they're so I think the girl started getting really frustrated with me, and she's like, well, we have this great program where you could do a little bit of everything and then decide later what you want to be. And I was like, oh my God, that sounds amazing. Sign me up. Let me do this. And for those of you who are not in the Navy, that is the undesignated program, which is
Yep.
uh
I've
yeah.
I've worked with people who got into the Navy undesignated, and they're like dying for responsibility. It was super easy to teach her because she wanted to go into an officer position. And
Okay.
so she was super, she'd been undesignated for X number of years. And I feel like that kind of position just puts you into this, want to do more. And so
Yeah.
it was great. It was actually really great to have a student who was from that background. But it is a big adjustment, I imagine, if you're initially thinking, okay, I'm going to go nukes, and then all of a sudden you're in undesignated.
Yeah. But I mean, it worked out. My first duty station was a bombing range, which was pretty cool.
Nice.
Worked with a lot of CBs and OSs. So the operation specialists, they would have people drop usually inert bombs, but every once in a while we would do live bomb things, and we get to drive the go track. And I think I drove a dump truck once or twice. So all cool things. So it wasn't a total loss. But then they sent me TAD to NAS Cecil Field, which was I guess, the parent base, which was 2.5 hours away. They sent me to PSD, Personnel Support Detachment. Got in there and they sent me to like work and travel, and then worked in admin, and then I worked customer service and loved the job. I feel like pretty much any job that I am in, if I have been given trust, I will like it. Like I don't think there's anything I wouldn't enjoy doing. Like maybe certain aspects of a job I might not like, garbage. But overall, it was a great experience. And coincidentally, when it came time to like people would make fun of me all the time because I was an airman working at a personnel support detachment, and I would get the question all the time like, what's an airman doing in PSD? It's usually seamen that are in those roles. And I'm like, I don't know. I'm just here. And I actually ended up, they wanted to keep me there. So they let me go back to my command. And then they pulled me only because my OIC wanted me back. And then they pulled me back up there again. So I finished up the rest of my active duty tour there. And then just funny, when I finally chose my rate, I decided to go as a pay clerk. The one
Wow.
thing that they offered me, and I was like, no, I don't want to do that.
Full circle.
Yeah, yeah. So, I mean, everything happens for a reason. I just was not listening at the time that the universe was telling me this is what I needed to do. And yeah, but it all worked out. I don't know what the ASVAB score is required for that particular thing, but I do know, the score that I had allowed me the option to do anything else as long as, at the time I was born in the US. But yeah, it is what it is.
Yeah, no, I think it's actually more common than not. Nothing ever goes according to plan. And
Mhm.
so it makes sense that it didn't go perfectly, but it is unfortunate that, you came in thinking, oh, I'm going to start working with nukes. It's a really prestigious program. And so to find out halfway through boot camp, and I'm sure, you've been told what to do for the past X number of weeks. You've just been given orders and just been told that your rank doesn't matter, and that you don't have, you get told what to do. And so when you're
Right.
at the end of that, they turn around and say, okay, now you're going to be told what to do in a completely different fashion than you expected. I'm sure it's disappointing, but it sounds like you made the most of it. So
Yeah. Absolutely. And I mean, so I went to ATD. So ATD was in Orlando also, which was also where the Nuke school was. So I had made some friends, the last weekend, our brother companies and the rival company, whatever, not rival companies. I don't, so the companies that are in our, like, graduating the same time that we were. So I made some friends, that last weekend, and a few of them were Nukes. And so I would run into them sometime while was at school um, and I'm like, how's it going? And they're like, so many people are dropping out. They're getting kicked out. And I'm like, oh, I'm kind of glad I didn't go. I mean, maybe I would have been fine, but it was scary hearing from the other side. It's just, I don't know. It's interesting. Definitely wish I had done more research before I joined. So, have that backup plan is extremely important because I mean, even you think about like SEALs and stuff, people go in wanting to be SEALs. Maybe they don't make it through the entire program and they got to pick something. And they say, choose your rate, choose your fate. So that's, that is a
Nice.
true thing.
Yeah, 100%. So I gotta ask, as someone who is an A student all the way through, like the natural progression is usually college or something like
It
that.
is.
And I know that your dad gave you like the three options, but trade school sounds even less extreme, right? Like it seems like, going from A student to military is gonna be plan C of those three options.
Right.
So was that how it felt? I mean, I know you felt like you were calling his bluff and you thought, there was some psychological battle at play there. But did
Yeah.
you feel, I don't know, did it feel like a plan C option when you were joining the military?
No, not at all. I think talking with, so it's like there's a lot of times like in high school, I don't know if you remember, but like we had a lot of the different branches, the recruiters coming in, and it was like avoid these people at all costs. Like
Hmm.
don't be in the same hallway as them because they're just gonna like not harass, but like they're gonna try to like pull you into it. And at that time, I wasn't as vocal as I am now. I wasn't as confident as I am now. And I could very much see someone being like, here, take this pen and sign your name right there. And I'm like, okay. So um, I could definitely see myself doing that back then just because I didn't want to disappoint anybody. Yeah, I mean, not as soon as I stepped in that office, but like just the way that the recruiters treated me, I really felt at home because just, that culture was very welcoming. They were funny. Yeah, it was not what I expected at all. If it was Marines, maybe it would have been different.
Right.
But Navy, I mean, it was a great group of guys working in that office. I know, like, even in between, like, while I was on the delayed entry program, I still went and visited them because I worked, like, not even 2 minutes from where their office was. And they would come see me at lunch and just check and see how I was doing, doing their job, doing their recruiter job. But I mean, I genuinely enjoyed spending time with them. And I think that made it a lot better. And I think like especially knowing that there were options besides like being on the ground with a gun, because you only know what you know.
Right.
And just knowing like, oh, you have smart people here too.
For sure. Yeah. You watch enough
So,
Rambo, you think it's all gonna be Rambo. And there's
right.
marketing to that, right? There's a reason
Yes.
that Top Gun is such a major hit, so it makes sense that that's kind of what you would expect. And getting surprised, pleasantly surprised that it's normal people, I think is something everybody who joins goes through. So that's
Yeah.
great.
And I think my dad being Army, right? He was a ranger. Like I would hear stories from him about like being out on the field. And I'm like thinking that this is what the military is
Right,
like
of
being
course.
out in the rain, being out there with eating these MREs. And I'm like, oh,
Yeah. Yeah, if you hear about the four low points of like a 10-year career 20 times before you go into a recruiting office, yeah, you're gonna
yeah.
have some expectations. That makes sense.
Yep.
Cool. My other question is going to be related to someone who has the A student mentality. So like the ASVAB was probably easy for you because you did well in school. Fair to say?
Yes, I think so. And my dad's, the knowledge that I gained from my dad being a mechanic also.
Right, right. So the background knowledge for the mechanical comprehension, auto and shop information, those subtests is going to help a lot as well. But I'm more interested in the math and English because that's usually what my most of my people are struggling with. They're usually studying with like super fundamental fraction stuff, averages, like basic, English vocabulary things.
Yeah.
What do you think it was that was like you were coming from Korea, and so I mean, I know you were very young when you came, but like what do you think it was that motivated you to kind of stay on top? Because it's so much easier to know all that stuff if you're keeping up K through 12 than it is if you've been out of high school for 5, 10 years and now you got to go back and try to relearn everything that you didn't learn the first time. So why would you say that you had that mentality? How is it that you were able to keep grades top of mind throughout your education? And I know
Oh.
that that's what contributed to, I would imagine that that's mainly what contributed to your success on the ASVAB outside of, the other subtests.
Yeah, it definitely so my parents were very it's very interesting. So I'm one of two growing up, and my sister is 2.5 years younger than me. Her birthday's in October, so she actually was 4 when she started kindergarten. She struggled for a good amount. We grew up in mainly in California, and then when we moved to Texas, that's a whole different story why that happened. But that's an interesting one, but it's not my story. So when we moved to Texas, Texas's school, like what they taught was different, right? So I hate to say it, but there was a good amount of the math and English in Texas that came very easily without me having to pick up a book because California was just kind of advanced in some of the subjects that were being taught, right? So I think it just kind of came very smoothly. But what was interesting is, coming from a household where my parents were, they had very high expectations. So if I had an A minus, I was grounded.
Oh.
So, but then my sister, if she got anything that like a C plus or above, they were like, "Oh my gosh, you're the smart." You like
They're
they were giving
celebrating.
her all this, yeah, celebrating. But what's funny is that when we moved to Texas, she started getting straight A's. Like she would be
Uh,
upset when she got a 96. And she was a salutatorian. But I think like once our parents knew like what we were capable of or what they thought they knew we were capable of, they very much stuck to that, right? So like if I had gotten A's my entire time and then all of a sudden one year in high school I got a B, I was grounded.
right.
Like so, and I was not allowed to take underwater basket weaving. I wasn't like none of the fluffy, classes. I was allowed to play golf. That was one thing that they let me do. That wasn't like chemistry 2 or calculus or whatever. But yeah, I think that's a big part of it. But if you were to ask me today, so now I'm 50 and I did some college. I never finished for various reasons. And if I were to try to take the ASVAB today, there's no way in hell that I would have 84 or whatever it was that I had. So like I would 110% be using your services to kind of help get me back to and even yeah, it's like you have to stay on top of it because if you don't use it, you lose it, right? Or if you don't have that passion to learn one particular thing. So, with the VOB, I deal with a lot of small business owners and they have that passion or that thirst for knowledge of a specific topic. And if you don't have that, then it's very easy to forget things. So, like right now, I'm trying to learn Italian because we just got orders. My husband is still active duty. We got orders to Italy. And I'm trying to learn Italian, but I just don't have that drive for it. So, if I have 2 days where I decided to do the chess or the music or whatever to get my streak, um,
Is that Duolingo? What are you using for your
it is
Italian?
Duolingo. How did you
Nice.
know?
Just a guess. Cool, cool. That's great. But
I'm
yeah,
at day 233, I think.
oh, congratulations. That's
Well, it's
great.
not all from Italian though. So when I do skip, a few days of Italian, then I'm like, what is this word? So it's like, the what you offer, I think, is a wealth of like opportunity, because anyone who is not going straight from high school and have already has the background of having a great grades
Right.
And, the longer that you're not doing it, the more you kind of, I don't want to say lose it, but you struggle a little bit more, right? So, having a tutor to help you kind of, re-spark the things that maybe you knew, or maybe they can teach you a different way of something you never learned to begin with. Yeah, that's huge. I love that
Thank
you
you.
offer
No,
that.
no, I appreciate it. And I love what I do. I think a lot of people do forget, what they're trying to, exposure to questions, especially multiple choice questions. If you're not getting if you haven't seen a Scantron in, X number of years, I mean, I know Scantrons are old technology, but if you haven't seen a multiple choice test in a long time, you're not used to the typical tricks. So it's
Yep.
actually a lot of low-hanging fruit early on tutoring to say like, this answer can't be right because of this. And it makes perfect sense to an adult because they have that crystallized intelligence of why things shouldn't make sense. But they don't have that experience of working with questions and looking for those red flags. So yeah, it's a great thing, and I do love helping my students a lot. But enough about me. I want to talk about VOB. So I want to know your experience. What is the mission of the VOB podcast, and what are you trying to do there?
Yes. So being a army brat and also the daughter of an serial entrepreneur, is like I like to call him. Um, I was brought up, just respect your veterans, respect your active duty, your military veterans, respect your business owners, especially small businesses, whether they're military or not, because that's who makes the world go round, right? If you have like just a bunch of corporations, the systems kind of change. I have learned that since leaving the military. I've worked for a couple of companies, large and small, and the mentality and the culture and things all kind of are a little bit different when you are a bigger company, right? Like from the higher up standpoint, the focus is similar, but I think the knowledge of what is happening further down the chain is a little bit more skewed because nobody wants to disappoint their boss, right? So, I mean,
Yeah.
that's nobody, like, it doesn't matter what size company you're at. Nobody wants to disappoint unless you really hate your boss, in which case that's a whole different story. But um, most people who want to keep their jobs do not want to disappoint their boss. So, the VOB, I actually started while I was working for a small business. I had been volunteering with a couple of really great nonprofits. So, Vets to Industry, shout out to them. So I was their director of marketing and events for 2 years. I also was the lead volunteer. I had started the USO back up in Whidbey Island, Washington while we were there. I guess they had one like decades ago, but then it kind of shut down and it just wasn't there. And I was like, this is not a small base. Why is there no USO here?
Hmm.
So I had spent a lot of my time doing that, and then we transferred out here to Norfolk. And after 2 years of Vets to Industry, I was like, I need to take a break. So I just kind of decided to stop, right, for a little bit. And I was like, what do I do with my time? So I started helping transitioning service members on LinkedIn and doing some mentoring on what was Veterati at the time. Veterati doesn't exist anymore, sadly. There are a couple of new ones, Mill Mentor and Post Veterati. And of course, American Corporate Partners are all great platforms if you're looking for a mentor, which I highly, highly recommend for anybody, no matter where you are in your journey, entrepreneurial or not. So I don't know, it just came to me that like support your veterans, support your small business owners. Like, okay. So we're going to start this VOB podcast. I love hearing people's stories, where they came from, what they did while they were in the service. So that's pretty much what we do, is like, or I say we, it's me. So I just hop on a Zoom like this and, just have the conversations, ask the questions, learn more about what, these entrepreneurial beings have done, what drove them to start, even some of the, the not so great parts. I think those are great learning points for someone else who is maybe, had considered starting their own business, but not sure where to start, or maybe they're afraid, right? I do notice when, talking to a lot of transitioning service members or even veterans that have been out for a while that are kind of wandering, they're going from one company to another. They just aren't finding something's missing. right? Something is very much missing for a lot of us. And maybe it just happened this way. Like maybe it's that whole journey, right? So the universe is like, Cindy, you need to build this. And so all the people that are going to talk to you are all going to be those people who have that entrepreneurial vision, but they don't see it themselves, a lot of them, right? And I ask, I'm like, well, what do you like to do? Well, why aren't you doing that? And some of them have been for somebody else, right? But they're not happy. And I'm like, okay, so what is it? Like, have you thought about doing your own business? Like, all this stuff. Why not start your own business? And I do know that business ownership is not for everyone, right? So you spend about, they say 20% of your time doing what the actual thing is that you love to do. Some people, that's not enough. They don't want to do all the other stuff and they don't really think about the fact that they can outsource a lot of that. Like you go through the pain for a little bit until you get to a point where you can start either delegating or, you decide to do the nonprofit route and you get volunteers that want to help also. Or if you are for profit, then you just get yourself to a point where you can survive, whether that means you're working another job while you're building your empire, or, I know some entrepreneurs that they are working another job while they're building their empire, and their first employee is not them. It's someone else that is doing all the stuff that they don't want to do,
Yeah.
and they grow it that way. So the journey is not the same for everyone, but that's why I created the VOB, was to kind of share those stories because everyone's story is different. It is also there to help support the entrepreneur, the veteran entrepreneur that is needing to get their message out, because you can have the best product or the best service out there, but if nobody knows about you, then eventually you're going to struggle if you're not already struggling. Right. So it was kind of like a three-part thing. It was like hearing the stories, the service stories that I love to hear all the time. I used to work for MWR at a club, the Chiefs Club in Yokosuka, Japan. And I loved sitting at the end of that bar and hearing all the retiree stories. Sometimes they were the same over and over again. So, but I mean, they were just great to hear. And, sometimes the older chiefs and the younger chiefs would kind of go into little tiffs, but, got to kind of calm those down sometimes. Like, I loved hearing those stories. I loved hearing my dad's stories growing up and love supporting small businesses, love supporting veterans. Inspiration is a huge thing. And I feel like so many veterans have the ability to inspire others to help them get to a point where they are happy, where they are feeling fulfilled after their time in the service, because it is sometimes very hard to find that.
Yeah. No, absolutely. I mean, just like I was talking about the trade schools and the college versus the military, when you get done with the military, there's kind of three options, right? Go get a job, go work for the government, or start your own thing. And starting your own thing has to be the plan C, because you're leaving a situation where you were arm in arm with people every single day. And
Yep.
going out and starting your own thing is so contrary to what you've been doing for your last entire career. So I think it's awesome that you are holding a space for that community to exist. I think it's really difficult to go out and find people who have that entrepreneurial spirit that you're talking about. And it's great that you're bringing those kinds of people together, because especially as a veteran, there's already kind of a feeling of loss, of that you got to grieve that old career, because when I was in Peace Corps, they say the toughest job you ever love. And I think it's a great for the military too. It is one of the toughest jobs that you'll ever love. And it's so hard to imagine that you'll ever love your next job the same way, unless it's
Right.
something that you built. So I think it's great that you're holding space and encouraging that kind of growth, that kind of direction, because it is contrary. It is counter to the grain, right? It is not the way that the river's flowing. You have to stand your ground and build something out of nothing as an entrepreneur. And the fact that you're bringing people together who have that kind of mentality and that kind of drive, I think is a really powerful thing.
Well, thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, we've so I did have to take a break for a little while. I can't remember if it's 1 or 2 years. I have to go back and look. But so right now I am I'm in the process of rebranding, also adding an extra layer or extra segment to the VOB. And that is to bring in more of the people who know how to do things. I still see it in a lot of the Facebook groups, right, for entrepreneurs. And you get these people who are like, how do I start my business? What do I do? And it's like, well, you know, where are you? Because that's going to be a big part of that, right? Every state's a little bit different. I'm out of Florida. Florida, thank goodness, is a lot easier and a lot less expensive than a lot of the other states out there. California,
Yeah.
California is, I think, was 800 a year for an LLC at the time that I was living there in 2012. So,
Yikes.
yeah, and
Yeah.
and thankfully Florida's not that bad. But like there's all these different things that people don't think about, right? Like and it's not like you have to get everything ready to go before you start. That is not the way to do it
Right.
either, right? But as long as you have the basics, like you've got your LLC, you are registered, you got to be legal. You don't want to go to jail. You can't do like maybe you could do your business in jail, but maybe not. Probably not. Don't get any
It's
ideas. So um, but getting your insurance to cover yourself and your family, all like the basics, get the basics down and figure out the rest while you're building it. Of course, you do need to make sure that what it is that you're going to build is needed. If it's like, I don't know, I just want to make picture t-shirts with my dog's face, maybe that would sell. I don't know. She's pretty cute. Um, but but it's like, okay, if I wanted to make, my company is t-shirts of my husband. Like, who's gonna buy that? No, there is not a need for that. So, knowing who your audience is, like that's all stuff that you kind of really should have before you start. But if you don't, like I want to provide those resources so that, what you didn't know, like here, think about this because these are kind of the basics that you need to think about as you're either starting or growing your business. Do you want to be a for-profit, nonprofit? Like I want to bring in those industry experts or the ones that have gone through that journey to share that specific topic, information about that because even if you've had a company for 10 years and you want to do some, it's successful, it's going great, but you want to like something's missing. You want to do something a little bit more, right? So maybe that particular episode would be helpful for them. Like maybe they do want to start a separate nonprofit that supports the for profit, but also supports something that they're very passionate about. So I am very excited for that. It's still in the beginning stages, so I haven't really like you were actually like this is the first time where I've publicly talked about it, which they sometimes they say don't do that, but whatever, it's fine. So
You heard it here first, folks. You might as well. I mean, if entrepreneurship isn't the first pancake over and over and over again, I don't know what it is. So like
that's true.
I think active brainstorming, while you're building it's not going to hurt you 9 times out of 10. I think it's more the fear of the criticism. Like I think that's
Yes.
most of what everybody who gets into entrepreneurship, that's the main thing that's blocked me in the past for sure is like these imaginary people and their opinions. And it's not even a real opinion of a real person. Like it's two
Yes.
times removed from reality. But it is the story you tell yourself and your perception is the reality. So I think again, having that kind of a podcast where people talk about either making it or building it to make it, you know, either of those are stories that are underrepresented. You hear all
Yeah.
about the success, but very
Yes.
rare to hear about the messy middle. So it's great.
And it's so important because I think a lot of people feel like they're the only ones going through it, and so they quit, right? Like they feel like nobody else has done this, nobody else is going through this, and I must suck and I'm just gonna stop. When it's like, nobody, and there's that whole other side too. It's like, oh, well, you know what? There's so many other coffee companies out there. Why, like, nobody's gonna want to buy my coffee,
Right.
you know? But that's not what it is. Like people buy from people that they like. People buy things that are unique. No one can offer what you offer because you are offering you and no one else is you. So it's just, I hear about so many people who have quit, right? Or they didn't start because they were worried about what somebody else thought
Hmm.
or because they thought they didn't have enough belief in themselves. And I want to give them a safe space to know like hey, we've got cheerleaders over here. I've talked with so many veterans like yourself, right? And it's like I want to help inspire other people because we should all be able to do this if this is what we want to do. And get out of your own damn head and you can do this. And that's yeah, I mean that's really what there's a lot more like down the line that I'm trying like it's going in my brain, right? And it's written down for later because if I start doing all of it
Right.
now, it's never going to happen. So it's like step 1, step 2. Like I'm working on these two things right now. But yeah, I'm excited. I hope that I hope it does if it helps one person, like I'm going to be happy. And I already know that it has because I know that some of the guests that have been on the podcast in the past have gotten new clients from it
Yeah.
and have been inspired from listening to somebody else's story. So,
Yeah. No, I mean, anybody who's out there doing their own thing, one that provides inspiration. But yeah, exactly right. Like, I wouldn't have this podcast if I didn't go on to somebody else's podcast and talk about ASVAB stuff and realize that there's people listening, you know? So
yes.
it's always a shock to me when because, I've been doing this podcast. I'm almost at 50 episodes. And, people still haven't, people are still like, oh, I heard about you from that podcast of somebody else's 2 years ago. It's like, when does it cross over to my own podcast?
Come
But
listen to us here.
yeah, exactly. But I hope more people listen to yours. You've been at it for, a good amount of time, and
Yeah.
I think it's great. I just think it's such a great mission, and I think it's underserviced community. So, I really wish you all the success, and I really think it's great what you're doing.
Thank you. And the feeling is mutual because, there is that younger generation. I see it. I have a senior right now, and I'm in one of those groups where it's like you get those parents that are like, "My kid got into Harvard and Brown and all this stuff." And these other parents are like, "Well, I'll be happy if my kid graduates high school." You
Hmm.
know? And I mean, there's plenty of entrepreneurs that are highly, highly successful that didn't finish high school, never went to college. Like, oh man, if I could. But I mean, it's like that. But there's certain things like if you want to enlist in the military, you got to have a decent ASVAB score, right? At least a passing one to get
Right.
anything. But the higher your ASVAB score is, the more doors that are going to open for you. And that is huge, right? Because not everybody is a great test taker. Not everybody has, I mean, my kid's a perfect example. She's extremely smart, but for whatever reason, when it comes to math, she shuts down. And I know she's capable because I've sat there and heard her talking to someone else about something and teaching her friends how to do certain things, but then she'll sit there and so we will be using you.
Awesome. No, I'll help I'll help your kid out. No problem at all. I'm super excited. I
Yeah.
love helping those lights turn on and helping people understand that they get it. So, yeah, no, I'm looking forward to it. Um,
And I do have a question for you though.
Go ahead.
So like if so ASVAB is for enlisted, right?
Mhm.
So are you able to help those that also want to be officers that maybe struggling in one like math?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Right now, I'm trying to work with more ROTC cohorts because they go into the officer track, but they still are required to score a certain GT score. So
Okay.
even if you're going officer, you are required to take the ASVAB, at least on the Army side. I know for Marines, they don't
Oh,
need, if they have a college degree, they don't need an ASVAB score. And so
okay.
because Marines is nested under Navy, I would bet that it was the same for Navy where you don't necessarily need to take the ASVAB if you're going to commission in the Navy. Is that correct?
Right. I believe so because I have been trying to talk to her about going to take the ASVAB and she's like, "No, I don't need that." And I'm like, "Okay, well, try the ACT." Like I like
Yeah.
try something else other than the SAT since I mean, she was 10 points away. 10 points.
Oof.
So, I mean, yeah, it is what it is, but no, I will be talking to you later
Well, the
after this.
world's hers. The world's hers. Like it opens
Yeah.
up to youth. I think there's a rich guy named Richard Felix, and he writes a book called "I Will Teach You to Be Rich." And he says
Oh,
that
yep.
I would trade. I would trade anybody in their 20s, all of my money, all of my houses, all of my yachts, everything to be their age and they become my age. And I'd still be getting a better deal. And that's true. That's true for your kid
Yeah,
too. Like that youth is just so much untapped potential. It's awesome. It's amazing the directions that you could go. So
it
it's great.
is. But it's sad that we don't realize it until we're older.
Yeah, exactly. Youth is wasted on the young. You hear that?
Yes, yes. It is so true. It's so true. And then you sit there and you think about all the things your parents told you when you were younger, and you're like, why did I not listen? And now I'm telling my kid, and I'm like, I know you're not listening, but I'm going to say this anyway.
Yeah,
So,
yeah, you don't have a choice. You don't have you have to say it, so
yeah.
that's how it
Yeah.
goes. Well, awesome. Okay, so if people wanted to learn more about the VOB podcast, where can they find you?
So right now, our website, which is thevob.io, I was not able to get the .com, unfortunately. But once we do rebrand, I will still keep that URL up, and then it'll forward to the new one. I'm also very active on Instagram. So if you are a veteran business owner and you follow the VOB, I will follow you right back. If you interact with our posts, I will interact with your posts, as long as you're not doing anything illegal. That's where I draw the line. We're also on LinkedIn. I don't post on there as often, but they can find me on LinkedIn, Cindy Palmer. And, even if they're not doing small business stuff, I do still try to help transitioning service members. I have a lot of recruiters, people that have gone through the transition successfully. So my network is your network. I built it to support that, but we're on Facebook as well. Facebook's not my favorite, but but we're there. So the website, and the videos are all hosted on YouTube. So the old ones, the new ones will end up. I think I can just change the name, so they'll probably end up over there. Yeah.
Awesome. Was
Yeah.
there anything else that you wanted to share? Anything else that you wanted to say?
I just want to say thank you for having me on here. I'm so grateful that our paths have crossed, like for more than one reason. So yeah, awesome, awesome. Thank you for making time for me.
Yeah, thanks so much for being on, Cindy. I'm inspired just talking to you, so I appreciate the time as well. Thanks.